Well, good morning, everybody, and God's blessings to you. This is the day that the Lord has made, and we are already rejoicing. We are celebrating, and we are glad in this day. I am so thankful to God, to all of you who have decided to connect with us on this Monday morning, 7 a.m. God bless you for getting up, for taking time out of your schedule to connect with us on this McFarland Monday motivational period. We're going to continue in the vein that we've been in for the last few weeks, and that is that vein of dealing with our emotions, dealing with our mental wellness, our health, mental health, and those things that are so important to us. And so I'm excited. I'm excited about that. I am glad to have our pastors on. Our executive pastor, Pastor Marlon Carter, is on with us. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Pastor. How are you?
Well, I'm doing quite well for a Monday morning. You know, Monday is the pastor's Sabbath. It should be that day that the pastor doesn't do anything, but that's not how it is at Grace. But I'm doing quite well. Glad to have you on this morning. And then we have Pastor Meadows, our generational pastor, on with us today. Pastor, how are you?
Good morning, Pastor. I'm doing well. I think we have a little bit of an echo, but we're so excited about the discussion today. Really excited.
Okay, well, good. I'm having a little trouble hearing you on the phone line.
Okay.
Let's see. You have a earpiece in, or it's just the phone laying there. But see what you can do if we can get. I'm sure they can hear you on Facebook. I want to make sure those persons who missed us last week, and I do apologize for last week, guys. We didn't know how to do that thing, and
Can you hear me now?
so after I got off, I hear you fine, I believe. Say something, Pastor.
Hello. Testing 1, 2.
Oh, well, you're still a little low
Still a little
on
low?
the phone
Okay.
line.
Okay. Let's try it. Let's
I
try
don't
this.
know what's
Can
going
you hear
on.
me?
There you go. There you go. All right, and I do hear a little echo coming back through, but we're gonna survive this. Yeah, we're gonna make sure that we survive what may. Listen, how about yesterday, guys? How about yesterday, and how the Lord blessed us at the place of grace? We celebrated our graduates on yesterday, elementary, pre, junior high, or middle school, or whatever we had. We were able to celebrate our young people on yesterday, college and high school, and then our men's praise team. That echo is, which one of y'all got your volume up?
I'm thinking I'm going to see if I can cancel something.
That's yours, Carter. Okay. I'm still getting the echo. If your volume is, your volume on your computer up?
No, what about now?
Okay, let me hear that. There we go. All right.
Is that better?
You have to hear me on the phone because that echo is just, I'm saying whatever I'm saying twice. I'm thankful they can't hear that on the Facebook feed, but they can hear it on the prayer call line. All right. Okay, here we are, guys. Yesterday again was a fantastic Sunday, and I'm just thankful to God. I love my Grace family, and I thank God for you. I think we got everything ironed out. I believe we do. I feel good about it, guys. So here's what I need for you to do. I need for you to go on and share, do what you got to do to get as many persons on, because today we're going to talk in the vein of mental health, mental wellness, but we're going to talk about something that everybody has dealt with, and that is depression. Depression. There are some who are dealing with it now. or there are some who have dealt with it. I have dealt with depression, and I would venture to say that our other pastors have dealt with it. I would venture to say that everybody who's listening to me right now, you've dealt with depression. Now, here's my philosophy, guys. If you don't deal with it, it will deal with you. That's the first thing I want to tell you is if you don't deal with it, it will deal with you. If you listened to the message on yesterday, I spoke about some of the negative emotions that are not necessarily mental illness, but it can be a momentary inconvenience. It does speak to your mental wellness. For instance, I was thinking last night about when a person is bitter. Have y'all ever known anybody who's just bitter for whatever it is, whatever the reason, just bitter, bitter, bitter all the time, bitter, 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 and they never deal with it? Now, to be bitter does not mean that you have a mental illness, but I've seen people develop a mental illness because they never dealt with the bitterness in their hearts. I've seen people develop a mental illness because they constantly lived in anxiety, lived in worry, and lived in fear, and developed a mental disorder because they did not deal with their momentary inconvenience. And so depression is one of those momentary inconveniences that people must deal with. And if you don't deal with it, guess what? It's going to deal with you. So that's why we are talking about it, because as pastors, we must talk about, here's what the Lord has taught me, and we're going to get into this discussion, but here's what the Lord has taught me. My job is to not preach number one, what I want to preach. That's the first thing. Secondly, my job is not to preach, because I would have done Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and just run them all over the place, I would have done that, My job is not to preach what I think you need. As a pastor, it is our job to listen to the needs of the people. So when I was doing all of the calls and I'm still doing them, all of the conferences with the various people and all of that, I was listening, and I heard so much by way of depression and bitterness and worry and those things that will lead to a mental disorder. And I even heard some areas where people really need professional help. I even talked to some folk that I believe need medication. I mean, I'm not going to get into that because I'm not a licensed therapist, but I dealt with all of that. And so the Spirit of God said, listen, it's time to deal with mental health. And so that's what we are dealing with. So I want to start with depression on today. And let me start, first of all, by defining depression. Here it is. Y'all got it? Y'all ready? Have y'all shared it? Here it is. Depression, a mood disorder that is marked by varying degrees of sadness, despair, loneliness, and that is typically accompanied by inactivity, guilt, loss of concentration. Listen to me, church. Social withdrawal, sleep disturbances, and sometimes suicidal tendencies. Did y'all catch that? This is deep. It is so deep. Gentlemen, let me read it again. Depression, a mood disorder. And I'm going to read this, and I want y'all to just jump in and let's talk a little bit about it. a mood disorder that is marked by varying degrees of sadness, despair, loneliness, and that is typically accompanied by, watch this, inactivity, guilt, loss of concentration, social withdrawal, that is not good, sleep disturbances, and sometimes suicidal tendencies. Let's talk about that because there are people who are dealing with this deadly emotion called depression. Let's jump in, guys. Who want to jump in first behind that definition?
Well, I think what you really indicated in the offset of the discussion, Pastor, is that if we don't deal with it, it will deal with us. By the time a
Yeah.
person reaches that place of depression, not only is their situation or their perception of their situation severe, but now their unaddressed emotions have now created an additional situation that is moved to that level of severe. It's at chronic level. I think what is so very important is that we help people to be more self-aware. We really don't take time to get to know ourselves, to connect with ourselves, to connect with what is at the heart of how I am feeling, what is going on in life, or what has transpired in life that is dealing with me in ways knowingly and unknowingly. And the unknowingly is many times more severe than the knowingly. There are things that are just with us. We talk about getting out of situations, but many times situations don't get out of us. And so we
Right.
talk about victory. Oh, I made it out of this trial. I made it out of that trial. But although we made it out of the trials, because the trials have not made it out of us, it is still dealing with us in our subconscious and is dealing with us in an underlying manner that takes us to that place of depression. And all it takes is a
That's
trigger
good.
of what we made it out of, and we move back into that low state.
Wow.
That's good. I don't know if I'm freezing up some on my end, but if I am, guys, I'll be right back. But that's so good, Pastor. It is so good because what you spoke about is a depressive disorder, basically. You know, everybody has been depressed.
Mhm.
All right. We've all been depressed. But again, when we don't do anything about our momentary inconveniences, it can turn into a disorder. And then another thing you spoke about, I thought that was so profound. I've preached this, I've used this in messages. Some of us been delivered, but not healed. Deliverance is when God takes us out of the situation. Healing is when God takes the situation out of us. And so some people have not had the situation taken out of us. Pastor Carter, what's your thoughts around this whole topic of depression?
Well, in preparing for this conversation, Pastor, one of the things that would bring me to a place of concern is how is it then that we get to this particular place of depression? I realize that once a situation abrupts or it happens, not being able to deal with our emotions in a manner that is healthy. I know that oftentimes we'll tell young boys, don't cry because boys don't cry, or don't do this because they're trying to mask the emotion without allowing an individual to discover what are those triggers to their emotions. And then individuals turn internally to start bottling those things inside, which remains in us. And all it takes is a moment of that thing to come back up again because we haven't dealt with the initial emotion the way that we should. Oftentimes I hear people, they'll quote scripture So I would start there to have clarity and understanding. I've gone to so many funerals that have caused people to say, "Oh, if I had wings of a dove, I'd fly away and be at rest," having nothing to do
Yeah.
with death in the moment, but yet we've processed our emotion believing that doves are symbolic of our peace in concerning that particular passage. So really being able to process our emotions healthy, I think, gets us to a better place of dealing with depression.
Well, you just said something, man, that like to make me jump out of my chair, because we teach boys, let's stay there for a moment, not to cry. So what we do quite often is teach people not to deal with their emotions, not to really deal with what they're doing. Even in the church, we look at people as weak
Right.
if they deal with their emotions. You know, we look at them as weak. Sometimes when people shout or just let it out, we think, well, something must be, wonder what's going on with them. Have you ever had that to happen?
Oh
And I
yeah.
know, I want the church folk who are on. Have y'all ever said that about somebody? You saw somebody, they shouted, they fell out, and you wanted to know, well, what's going on in their life. Well, something is going on, but we almost look at people as weak. I want to talk about that. Why, or what's going on where especially men, and a lot of men are breaking from depression and other things, because we've been taught, boys don't cry, don't express, don't emote, don't deal with your emotion. Let's talk about that.
Well, I think we have to. There's this impression that we have to keep it together. And you would venture, yes, into men, but also kind of going back to those who are caregivers, carrying various weights, trying to maintain things professionally. This idea that I have to keep it together. I have to stay I have to stay in control, whether I'm in control or not. And this
Mm-hmm.
idea of being vulnerable, that if I am crying, if I'm externalizing, then now I'm inviting people that I want or don't want into the circumstance. And as safe as church should be, as safe as sometimes your own family should be, people aren't always um, willing to help. It is more of that preying on, capitalizing on, but ultimately understanding that God has given me those tears. If God didn't want us to cry,
That's
he
good.
would
That's
not
good.
enable our bodies to be able to cry and put chemicals in our body that would accompany those tears to bring healing and wellness. And so understanding that God has given me everything to process the challenges that I will face in the human experience.
Well, you
Wow.
said something. Pastor, sound like you want to jump in.
Well, I was just going to say, I just wish the people of God from our Christian journey would embrace the joy of the Lord more than the moments that we try to conceal from everybody. We don't mind getting up, sharing a testimony, but at the same time, we struggle with being vulnerable in those spaces. So tears oftentimes equate to the opposite of what we will find our greatest joy at, in terms of if God does something. We don't even emotionalize that. Oftentimes, I heard Pastor use the term being vulnerable. We don't want people to know when the Lord has blessed us,
Yeah.
out of fear
Yeah.
of what they're going to say about us. One thing that I have
Mm-hmm.
not totally been delivered from is what I think people are saying. And
Mm.
oftentimes that's where it becomes a depressive, let's step away, let's push back, so that I can then shield oneself. But you can't really shield yourself by yourself. And
Mm.
I don't think that we have come to understand
Yeah.
that there is no safety ultimately when you're solo, because that's what the enemy would want us to do, is to be isolated without a voice when we're in a moment of weakness.
Well, you just spoke about the definition I just read. Part of it is they start to isolate. That makes things even worse, guys. When people
Yes.
are depressed, they pull back. That is so dangerous. I want us to hold that thought right there. But let me tell y'all something. I had to learn how to cry.
Hmm.
I had to learn how to cry per se, being a grown man. I used to not be able to cry. But I'm gonna tell you something, man. When I'm going through, if I could get just a little cry, I'm not a big crier now, but if I could just get just a little cry in, it's a release. And as Pastor Meadows said, God gave us those tears for a reason. But I'm looking at some of the comments, and they are so profound. Uh, Tears can be tears of joy.
Yes.
Man, I love that feeling when something chokes me up. And I mean, you get that lump in your throat, tears of joy, man, and you see something that's so beautiful until it chokes you up. But crying is so necessary. But to cry all the time, you're developing a problem.
Hmm.
Okay, to cry all the time, you're developing a problem. Let me ask you guys this. I mean, by way of transparency, and you don't have to go through into what it is. Have you ever had periods of depression? And
Certainly.
what do you think kind of caused it? I'll start with you, Carter.
Certainly, I do think that there are definitely moments and certain markers, but I do think that there are also combination of triggers of unresolved things that may have been at the back of my mind, but it comes up again. So it's one of those cases whereby you think you've overcome a situation, but it's like, so you don't really have you don't have new spirits that meet you oftentimes, especially in church. It's like, oh, I've seen this one before, and I thought I defeated the last time. And it's like it'll push you backwards instead of pushing you forward. It's almost like the deepest level of disappointment, especially when you believe that you're doing all that you can and people
Hmm.
just don't understand.
Yeah.
It just, this whole conversation just reminds me a lot of the old songs grandmother used to sing. Those words had value. They may have sung their way through it, but it just
They
takes
did.
you back, and it's a disappointing to the point where you really just don't want to face anybody.
Yeah. Well, what you're saying, and that can really be depressing whenever we do our best. I know that's been me, and if your best ain't good enough or you still miss the mark. Pastor Meadows, have there been times when you've been depressed, and what what was around it? You don't have to go into details, but
Right. I mark it with kind of kind of generally two categories. When I've been in situations where literally I couldn't see the way out. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever been in them, but there's some moments, and that's why it's so important to process the emotions, where you're sometimes at standstills in life where you literally cannot see the way out.
yeah.
And so I can mark it in moments there, but then there have been other moments where um I couldn't I could not do it over. So sometimes there are regrets in life that we try to
Yeah.
reconcile. And I think that goes into, you don't get do-overs, you get do-betters. But sometimes you
Yeah.
wish, okay, I wish I
Yeah.
could do this over. And so not processing the journey of life, seeing ahead, not seeing how again, not being able to do over. And as Pastor Carter said, the triggers from previous unresolved situations. That what ends up happening is because I didn't connect with my emotions concerning that situation. When in the face of this one, it's now, the grief of that and this, and some more of that, and a little bit more of this. So just that build up of that which is unaddressed. But like I said, a combination. Yeah.
I'm looking at a comment that is so profound. Are you seeing that, Pastor?
Yeah,
Casey
I think
Norman
that
says,
summarized, especially for me. Go ahead,
yeah,
Pastor.
yeah. She says, well, I guess, Casey Norman says, as a manic depressant, there it is. I was raised to be strong and trust God, but never how to address my weak moments. It used to be difficult to talk about because most people just made you feel worse. Wow. Now that is so profound. And I think we all looking at that same comment.
Right.
And we were raised, just trust God. And yes, we do trust. We don't want to negate that. God, we do trust God, but we have to be taught how to process things, process our moments, or else we will internalize it and we'll get to the point where we don't know what's wrong with us. I've known people, they're like, Pastor, I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't even, tell you what's wrong with me. I want to shift just a moment, and boy, our time is running. I wish we had more time. I want to talk a little bit about being depressed, or let me say it like this. We spoke about being depressed from those moments of disappointment or things we could do over. Have you ever had a great success, accomplishment, and fell into depression right after the accomplishment?
Yeah, that's oftentimes, and I don't just hear that from myself. I hear that from pastors, that people seem to leave after a situation is over and you've poured out everything that you can pour out, and people are patting you on your back, only to return once the curtain has closed, so to speak, and you fall into that deep. I'm talking that one of the darkest places that I've ever been was when everybody was cheering and everybody was happy and good to go. But it's like, now, God, why am I in this state of mind? So I've been there.
I've been depressed after some of my greatest success. Pastor Meadows, have you ever experienced? I preached
Listen.
a sermon years ago called "Sorrow After Success." Have you ever experienced that?
Listen. It's whether it's the perceived to be greatest sermon, successful moments in pastoral ministry, and when you come down, I think, and what I realized is that we are not trained to embrace our own success.
We're not.
I mean, subconsciously, somebody would say, "Oh, you preach very well," and I'll say, "Oh, it was all right." I mean, it's this idea that I have to. I don't understand. People don't understand the difference between humility and humiliation. We are not taught humility. We we cast self-humiliation as humility, but we don't know how to embrace success because we don't want others to feel intimidated or whatever the reason. But oftentimes we don't teach our youth, we don't teach ourselves. It's an adult and youth problem that we just don't know how to embrace success and process even the highs of highs, and thereby we can't process the lows of lows.
Well, Creflo Dollar calls it false humility. which
Mm-hmm.
is so profound. Somebody say, "Hey, man, you did a good sermon today." Oh, it wasn't that good. He said, "Just accept it.
Mhm.
It was, yes, it was. I did it today."
Right.
But
You
I
know,
think we feel we have to, play it down, downplay it. Go ahead, Pastor Carter.
well, I was just going to say, I think it's so important because, as you know, both of you all are extremely important in our lives. And so, whenever I think about that, would we do the same thing knowing the level of injury that it'll cause to the offspring or the level of injury it will cause to children around us for us to model that behavior? Because, in essence, they're going to respond based on modeling as well. So when they see us when no one else can, and when they hear us when no one else can, I believe it becomes a training ground of how we respond in those moments. So if
Yeah,
I have had success, we should really take a moment, which I struggle with this, to embrace the success, embrace the moment, to live for the moment before trying to go to the next thing. I mean, oftentimes we'll have something of success, and as soon as people start leaving, we start planning for the very next thing instead of embracing the moment. And so, therefore, I believe we begin to model, just as Sister Sarah Thomas shared, some of that is learned behavior. So I
yeah.
just try to now be more conscious of behavior because I realize that it's being replicated by a little fella.
Well, I'm looking at some of the comments, and they're so profound. I see what Angelita Howard talks about. I've struggled with pouring out and then believing I should be doing more. Now, I struggle with that. I don't think I ever do enough. I'm pouring out, and people think, "Man, you should be all right. Look at all you've done." I don't think I've done enough. I'm hard on myself. I'm looking at Patricia Matthews talks about. So true, Pastor Meadows. We're so hard. We're so hard on ourselves,
Yeah.
which is so true. Sometimes I'm my worst critic, my worst enemy. I'm just very, very hard on myself, even after success. I want to read something to you guys. Y'all got a few more minutes?
Yes.
All right, let's take a few more. I hope the people stay with us. I know it's already 7:30, but speaking about sorrow after success, I talked about this in a sermon many years ago. I hadn't preached this probably in 10 years, but it came to mind when we were talking about this. And this is Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 19. This is right after he just had a major success with what I call a showdown on Mount Carmel, when he
Hmm.
defeated the prophets of Baal and the prophets of the groves. He had a major success. God showed up. God validated him, destroyed all of those prophets, rained down fire from heaven. So I think everybody know where I am. That happened on Mount Carmel. It is in 1 Kings chapter 19, around verse, let me start at verse 1. And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a message unto Elijah, saying, so let the gods do to me and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. So Elijah had killed the prophets of Jezebel and Ahab. Jezebel said to Elijah, sent word, say, if I don't do the same thing to you tomorrow, then my life is no longer worth living. So now she's threatened him. Verse 3. And when he saw that, he arose and went for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. Verse 4. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a juniper tree and requested for himself that he might die, and said, it is enough. Now, Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers. In other words, this guy fell into despair to the point where he wanted God to take his life. And it was right after a great, great success. That happens. That has happened to me. I have had great worship on Sunday, come home depressed, get home and depressed. And I have to think to myself, Lord, why am I depressed? I have no reason to be depressed. We're going to take about 5 more minutes and we're going to let it go, guys. But, people are depressed not only after that, they're depressed, the loss of loved ones. They've not really dealt with that. Went through divorce. I was very depressed when I went through a divorce many years ago. Thankfully, I knew how to deal with it, to not internalize it. That's the first thing. Let's speak about that. And this will be our last area we'll talk about: the need to express, to not internalize it, and how dangerous internalizing something really is. Because when I read that definition concerning depression, here it is again: a mood disorder that is marked by varying degrees of sadness, despair, loneliness, and that is typically accompanied by inactivity, guilt, loss of concentration, social withdrawal. Let's speak in that vein of social withdrawal, internalizing it, getting by ourselves. Let's speak to the need of people needing people.
Well, Pastor, one of the
first?
things that I'll yield my time to, and I'm sure that you'll be able to speak to this matter very direct. People need people, but yet people struggle with people. At the core of pleasing people, though the people are representative of the body of Christ, they're sometimes the most challenging people to, one, trust, to be vulnerable, to communicate with. So therefore, it seems to be safer to internalize and bottle that anxiety in those moments up. And then from there, it becomes isolation. So can you help us to understand this whole people dynamic? And then I'll yield the remainder of my time to you and Pastor Meadows concerning people.
Well, we have to be very careful, as you said, with people, because people a lot of time can be the problem, And so when you've been hurt, it's hard to trust. When you've been hurt by people, it's hard to trust people, because in your mind, you think that if that person did it, this person is going to do it. People deal with that in relationships all the time. They can't love again because they were hurt so badly by somebody else. But the reality is that we still need people.
Mm-hmm.
We still need relationship. God created man to be in relationship. I spoke a little bit about that on yesterday, when God looked at Adam and said, "It is not good that the man should be alone." Adam need human contact, human relationship. So it is incumbent upon us to find it in some way or another. Be careful, be very vigilant, because there are some people who, when you're going through, know that you're vulnerable, and they are professionals at taking advantage of your vulnerability. But the fact still remains, we still need people. To say, long as I have King Jesus, I don't need nobody else. Well, listen, you do need Jesus. Get Jesus to help you connect with the right person.
Right.
Pastor Meadows, you want to jump in?
No, I think community is so important. I think that's kind of how we left off last week. The importance of community pouring back into us. I think we are designed to internalize and externalize. It is easy to internalize. And that is why we must be discerning and filter our thoughts. As you were talking about on yesterday, just really being careful of the thoughts that we allow, right? That people just like thoughts, they just come to you, right? And so I have to then filter. Okay, now you are the people that I have to pastor. God has given me charge over you to pastor, but that don't mean you're my friend. You're my inner circle. Jesus knew how to have an inner circle even within the 12. So I think we have to ask God for discernment in who we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with, and then we have to be careful of the thoughts that we think. So the filter, asking God for discernment, and then not allowing the trauma from disappointment in previous relationships to make us miss valuable opportunities to connect with quality individuals. The more we are hurt, the more we tend just to generalize people.
Withdraw.
Because I had bad experience with the people at that church doesn't mean that all people in church are the same. And so
Yes.
sometimes we very easily, I found myself doing it. Hey, it's more easy to just not deal with people because of
Right.
the experience that
Right.
I had with this set of people. But all people aren't the same. I wouldn't want to be generalized, and neither should I allow myself to allow the trauma and the traumatic experiences of life create this generalization concerning people
Yes.
as a whole.
Wow. You know,
I love it, guys. I go ahead, Pastor.
one of the things that really helped me is Psalms 55, and looking at David and that whole portion around it was not an enemy. It was someone that I took sweet counsel with. But he
Yeah.
continued to go back. He expressed so many emotions in dealing with Psalms 55. The first thing that I was shocked in study is that he could have used any bird, but he used the dove.
Use the
He could have,
dove.
and a dove is oftentimes prey for someone else, and predators reach out for that. But if he could just get to a safe place to hide himself in a rock, although he was a dove. But the part where he deals with what his resolve was, I'm going to pray to God. I'm not going to just pray one time. I'm going to pray often. So
Yes.
although we may find ourselves hurt, and it may not always be by an enemy, I think sometimes we retreat when injury comes, when it's at the same table. And we find ourselves wanting to leave the table instead of running to God, saying, God, you saw this moment. He never gave name or reference directly of who this enemy was that injured him. But his resolve was, I'm going to pray, and he's going to then turn it into the hands of the Lord that he may deal with the matter. But I think that it was such an ebb and flow of up and down and highs and lows throughout
Yeah.
Psalms 55 until it gives us to know that we're not exempt in that process. It didn't mean that he wasn't going to deal with people, but it did mean that he was going to keep his focus on God in the midst of how he had to deal with people. And I think that our core, our compass, our North Star has to be our prayer life, number one, and understanding the need for us to have multiple communities so we don't feel obligated and stuck in those moments when we don't feel like we have anybody.
Well, you speak about that community. Both of you have spoken about that. That is so profound. Church can be one of those communities, and even we have to be careful even at church. But I think you're safer there. I know people always talk about church hurt. I still think church is a safer place than anywhere else in the world. I believe that. I believe it is still the safest community. I believe you're going to find more God-like people in church. Don't let that one person create your thought about the whole group. You know, I still believe church is the best place, not the perfect place, but the
But the
best
best.
place. But you spoke about David, and I'm closing, guys. I got to, because my folk, they are still on. They must be enjoying it. But that was David's son. What was his name?
Absalom.
David's
Absalom.
Absalom.
Mm-hmm.
His son Absalom, and his most trusted counselor Ahithophel,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
that caused him harm And that's why David said it was not an enemy. It was a friend. We took sweet counsel together. We went to the house of God together. He's reminiscing about who it was.
Yes.
It was a trusted, and listen, I have been betrayed by one I should have been able to trust. It hurts, but I still got people in my life.
Yes.
I still got people in my life. Listen to me, guys. I've been hurt by a woman, but I still married one. So let me let you guys, y'all have been very good very helpful this morning, guys. And I just see so many people on in the comment sections dealing, just
These
giving
are
very
comments.
helpful,
Yeah.
very powerful comments. And I'm just so glad to see, guys, I got to keep my mind. Come on, declare that. I got to keep my mind. That's what I tried to preach about yesterday. It's incumbent upon me
to keep my mind.
I gotta keep my mind. I'd rather lose a leg. I'd rather lose a hand. But I don't want to lose my mind. Father, we pray for your people. We pray for your people now. We pray that you will give us strength as we continue to deal with our minds. Help us. Whatever is needed, help us. In Jesus' name, amen. Somebody was going to jump in. I didn't want to lose nothing.
I was just going to say, just before I go, it's that time for me. Will you all make sure you talk a little bit about what's happening tomorrow night? It's Tuesday, and I understand that we will have Tuesday with therapists. So if you all will, make sure you highlight that for us. And y'all have a great rest of the day. Thank you, Pastor, for your leadership. We certainly appreciate you being obedient to the will of God, that we will have these challenging conversations, because these conversations are not easy. And thank you for opening up Grace phone lines that individuals are able to call and be directed in a manner that's going to get them what they need. So blessings to you. Love you all. You all be well.
We'll be back on next Monday as well. But tomorrow night, this is just a segue. You've given me my segue. Tomorrow night, Bible class. We'll be talking to some licensed. You can turn your phone off, Pastor Carter. Go on, get him, Connor. Go on, get Connor. He don't even know his phone ain't on. But anyway, tomorrow night we'll be talking with some licensed therapists. Can you call Pastor's phone and tell him he need to hang up, because we can hear him on the phone line. I don't want him to say something else. Connor, you better bring you. No, okay. But anyway, guys, let's get a couple of announcements and we're going to let you go. Tomorrow is Bible class. Be with us tomorrow night in Bible class. And then we want to, let's see what else we have going on this week. Danishes and Donuts with Dads. That's Sunday, June the 18th. Dads come out at 8:30. The kids are going to have Danishes and donuts. And what else do we have? My mind is gone. Holy Land trip. Okay. The deposit is needed by June 15th if you're going to get the $100 off. I want everybody who wants to go to the Holy Land with me, come on and go. Let's have a good experience. Guys, I'm going to let you go. I've held you long enough. Yes, Sister McFarland's birthday is coming up, and we're going to celebrate on the 4th Sunday. Our First Lady, wonderful, wonderful lady, and we're going to celebrate her birthday on the 4th Sunday. Everybody ought to be at church. All right, I'll see y'all tomorrow night for Bible class. God bless you. I want you to have a good day, everybody. I love you. Bye-bye.